What if I told you that some of the most common parenting mistakes, ones that seem harmless or even necessary, are actually rewiring your child's brain in ways that could affect them for life? The worst part? Most of us make these mistakes without even realizing it, passing them down from generation to generation like some kind of unintentional family curse. I'm talking about everyday parenting decisions that millions of American families make every single day. Things like how we handle tantrums, the way we discipline our kids, or even how much screen time we allow. These aren't obvious red flags. They're subtle patterns that seem normal, even responsible. But here's the shocking truth. Modern neuroscience has shown us that these common approaches can literally reshape our children's developing brains. But before you start spiraling into parental guilt, take a breath. I'm not here to shame anyone. Every single parent watching this has made these mistakes, myself included. The difference is that now we know better, and when we know better, we can do better. Today, we're going to dive deep into the 5 most damaging parenting mistakes that are backed by solid neuroscience research. But more importantly, I'm going to give you practical, real-world strategies to fix these patterns starting today. Because here's what I've learned after years of studying child development. Loving our kids comes naturally, but raising them consciously, that's a choice that can change everything. Let me paint you a picture that might sound familiar. It's 6 p.m. on a Tuesday. You're exhausted from work, dinner needs to be made, and your 5-year-old is having a complete meltdown because you gave them the blue cup instead of the red one. Your first instinct might be to snap at them, ignore the tantrum, or just hand them your phone so they'll calm down while you handle everything else. Sound familiar? Of course it does. We've all been there. But what if I told you that in that exact moment, your child's brain is actually looking to you to learn one of the most important skills they'll ever develop: emotional regulation. And depending on how you respond, you're either helping them build that skill or potentially setting them up for years of emotional struggles. The truth is, every interaction we have with our children is literally shaping their neural pathways. During the first few years of life, a child's brain forms over 1 million neural connections every single second. That's not a typo. 1 million connections every second. These connections don't just determine how they learn math or language. They're forming the blueprint for how they'll handle stress, build relationships, and navigate challenges for the rest of their lives. Think of it this way. If your child's brain is like a house under construction, every interaction you have is like laying down the electrical wiring. Get the wiring right, and the house functions beautifully. Get it wrong, and you might spend years trying to rewire the whole system. But here's where most parenting advice gets it wrong. We often treat children like they're just small adults who should be able to control themselves if we just explain things properly or give them the right consequences. The problem is, a child's brain literally cannot do what we're asking it to do. The prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain responsible for self-control, emotional regulation, and good decision-making, doesn't fully mature until somewhere between ages 23 and 29. Read that again. Your teenager's brain won't be fully developed until they're almost 30. So when we expect our 4-year-old to just stop crying, or our 10-year-old to always make good choices, we're asking them to use a part of their brain that simply isn't ready yet. It's like expecting someone to run a marathon when they're still learning to walk. It's not that they don't want to do it. They literally can't. But here's the beautiful part about understanding this. Once we know how the brain actually develops, we can work with it instead of against it. We can become our children's external prefrontal cortex, helping them regulate their emotions and make good decisions until their own brain is ready to take over. And the best news of all, the brain's neuroplasticity, its ability to change and adapt, is strongest during childhood. This means that even if we've been making these mistakes for years, it's never too late to start helping our children's brains develop in healthier ways. Now, let's dive into those 5 critical mistakes that are affecting your child's brain development right now. Mistake number 1. Using yelling and punishment as your go-to discipline strategy. Let's start with the big one. The mistake that probably hits closest to home for most of us. Raising your voice and using punishment as your primary way to correct behavior. Before you click away feeling judged, let me say this. If you've ever yelled at your kid, you're in good company. Studies show that over 90% of parents have yelled at their children, and most of us do it more often than we'd like to admit. The reason we yell isn't because we're bad parents. We yell because it works, at least in the short term. When we raise our voices, kids usually stop what they're doing and comply. The problem is what's happening in their brains during these moments. When you yell at a child, their brain immediately goes into what neuroscientists call fight, flight, or freeze mode. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, starts flooding their system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. In this state, the thinking part of their brain essentially goes offline. They're not learning the lesson you're trying to teach them. They're just trying to survive what feels like a threat. And here's the really concerning part. Children who are regularly yelled at show actual changes in their brain structure. MRI studies have found that kids who experience frequent, harsh verbal discipline have alterations in areas of the brain linked to language processing and emotional regulation. We're literally rewiring their brains for anxiety and stress. Over time, this creates one of 2 responses. Either children become overly compliant. They obey out of fear, but they never actually learn to make good decisions on their own. Or they become defiant and rebellious, viewing authority as something to fight against rather than work with. But here's what we can do instead. The next time your child misbehaves, try what I call the pause and connect approach. Take a deep breath, get down to their eye level, and use a calm but firm voice. Instead of, "Stop hitting your sister right now," try, "I can see you're really upset. Hitting isn't okay, and I'm here to help you figure out a better way to handle this." This approach does something completely different in their brain. Instead of triggering their alarm system, you're activating their social engagement system, the part of the brain that wants to connect and cooperate. You're teaching them that mistakes are opportunities to learn, not threats to survive. Mistake number 2, ignoring tantrums and emotional outbursts. The second mistake is one that sounds reasonable on the surface, but can be incredibly damaging. Ignoring your child's emotional outbursts. How many times have you heard, "Just ignore the tantrum, and they'll learn to calm themselves down"? This advice is everywhere, from parenting books to well-meaning relatives. The logic seems sound. If you don't give attention to negative behavior, it should decrease over time. And for some behaviors, like attention-seeking whining, this might work. But when it comes to genuine emotional distress, tantrums, meltdowns, or intense feelings, ignoring your child sends a very different message than what we intend. Remember, your child's prefrontal cortex isn't developed yet. They literally cannot calm themselves down the way we can as adults. When they're having a meltdown, their nervous system is completely dysregulated. Imagine having a panic attack and having everyone around you walk away and ignore you. That's essentially what it feels like to a child when we ignore their emotional distress. From a brain development perspective, these moments of intense emotion are actually opportunities. Your child's brain is looking for co-regulation. They need you to lend them your calm nervous system to help them return to baseline. When you ignore them instead, you're missing a crucial chance to help them build the neural pathways for emotional regulation. Studies have shown that children who receive consistent emotional support during distressing moments develop stronger stress resilience and better emotional regulation skills as they grow up. On the flip side, children who are regularly ignored during emotional distress can develop what researchers call learned helplessness, a sense that their feelings don't matter and that they're on their own when things get tough. So what should you do instead? The next time your child has a meltdown, try staying nearby and offering calm presence. You might say something like, "I can see this is really hard for you. I'm going to stay right here while you work through these big feelings." You're not rewarding the behavior, but you're providing the emotional safety net their developing brain desperately needs. Mistake number 3, overprotecting and solving every problem. This third mistake comes from a place of pure love, which makes it particularly tricky to recognize. As parents, our instinct is to protect our children from pain, disappointment, and struggle. We want to smooth their path and shield them from the harsh realities of the world. But when we take this too far, we actually rob our children of essential opportunities for brain development. Here's what happens in the brain when children face age-appropriate challenges. They experience what scientists call eustress, positive stress that promotes growth and learning. When a child struggles with a puzzle, has a disagreement with a friend, or faces a setback, their brain has to work harder. This mental effort literally builds new neural pathways and strengthens existing ones. But when we constantly swoop in to solve problems for our children, we're depriving their brains of these growth opportunities. Worse yet, we're sending them the message that we don't believe they're capable of handling challenges on their own. Over time, this can lead to what psychologists call learned helplessness, a belief that they're not competent to handle life's difficulties. Children who are consistently overprotected often struggle with anxiety, low self-confidence, and difficulty making decisions as they get older. Their brains haven't had the practice they need to develop resilience and problem-solving skills. I'm not suggesting we throw our kids to the wolves or ignore their genuine need for support. The key is finding what child development experts call the zone of proximal development. That sweet spot where a challenge is difficult enough to promote growth, but not so overwhelming that it causes harm. Instead of immediately jumping in to fix things, try asking questions like, "What do you think you could try?" Or, "How do you think we might solve this together?" This approach validates their capability while still offering your support and guidance. Mistake number 4, excessive screen time. Now we come to what might be the most relevant mistake for parents today. Excessive screen time. I know. You've probably heard this one before. But stick with me, because the latest research on how screens affect developing brains is more concerning than most parents realize. The average American child now spends over 7 hours a day looking at screens. That's more time than they spend sleeping. And while some screen time can be educational and even beneficial, excessive use is literally rewiring our children's brains in ways that make it harder for them to focus, regulate emotions, and connect with others. Here's what happens in the brain during screen time. The constant stream of visual and auditory stimulation triggers the release of dopamine, the brain's feel-good chemical. This creates a feedback loop where the brain craves more and more stimulation to achieve the same level of satisfaction. Over time, this can make real-world activities, like reading a book, having a conversation, or playing outside feel boring by comparison. Even more concerning, excessive screen time during the critical early years can interfere with the development of essential neural pathways. Children who spend too much time on devices often struggle with what researchers call continuous partial attention. They can't focus deeply on any one thing because their brains have been trained to expect constant stimulation. The effects go beyond just attention problems. Studies have shown that children with excessive screen time have higher rates of anxiety, depression, and sleep problems. They also tend to have more difficulty with face-to-face social interactions and emotional regulation. But here's the thing. I'm not suggesting you throw all your devices in the trash. That's not realistic in today's world. Instead, the key is being intentional about screen time. Choose high-quality content over mindless entertainment. Watch together when possible, so screen time becomes interactive rather than passive. And most importantly, make sure screen time doesn't crowd out other essential activities like outdoor play, face-to-face conversation, and unstructured creative play. Mistake number 5. Inconsistent routines and boundaries. The final mistake might seem less dramatic than the others, but it's equally important. Failing to establish consistent routines and clear boundaries. In our busy, chaotic world, it's easy to let structure slide. But for developing brains, predictability isn't just nice to have. It's essential. A child's brain craves predictability because it helps them feel safe and secure. When routines are consistent, children know what to expect, which reduces stress and anxiety. This predictability also helps regulate their circadian rhythms, leading to better sleep and more stable moods. But when life is chaotic and unpredictable, children's stress systems stay activated. They're constantly on alert, trying to figure out what's coming next. This chronic stress can interfere with learning, memory, and emotional development. Consistent boundaries serve a similar function. When children know what the rules are, and that those rules will be enforced fairly and consistently, they feel secure. They can focus their energy on learning and growing, rather than constantly testing limits. This doesn't mean you need to run your home like a military camp. It's about finding rhythms and routines that work for your family and sticking to them as much as possible. Maybe it's a consistent bedtime routine, regular meal times, or predictable responses to challenging behavior. Breaking the cycle. So there you have it. The 5 most damaging mistakes that are affecting children's brain development across America. But here's what I want you to remember. Recognizing these patterns in your own parenting doesn't make you a bad parent. It makes you a conscious one. Every single parent makes these mistakes sometimes. The difference is that now you have the knowledge to do things differently. You have the opportunity to break cycles that may have been passed down in your family for generations. Change doesn't happen overnight, and you don't need to be perfect. Start with one small shift. Maybe it's taking 3 deep breaths before responding when your child misbehaves. Maybe it's sitting with your child during their next meltdown instead of walking away. Maybe it's replacing 30 minutes of screen time with a walk around the neighborhood. Whatever you choose, remember that every small change you make is literally rewiring your child's brain for the better. You're not just changing their childhood, you're shaping the adult they'll become. The beautiful truth about parenting is that it's never too late to start doing things differently. Your child's brain is remarkably resilient and adaptable. Every moment of connection, every calm response, every time you choose understanding over judgment, these moments add up to create lasting change. So be patient with yourself, celebrate small victories, and remember that conscious parenting isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional, informed, and committed to breaking the cycles that no longer serve our children. Your kids don't need perfect parents. They need parents who are willing to grow, learn, and do better when they know better. And by watching this and implementing these changes, you're already giving them the greatest gift of all, a parent who cares enough to keep trying. The future of your family starts with the choices you make today. Choose consciousness. Choose connection. Choose to break the cycle. Your children and their children will thank you for it.